Okay, let's go ahead and get started with this fine art canvas piece here. We're working in black and white today. I have my clear contact paper and I've covered this up, cut out the perimeter of the shapes here. And for the first step, we're just going to black this out with the opaque black. The clear contact paper you can pretty much get at Walmart, Target, and all the other mega stores. And I use it on canvas because it really doesn't blow around as much as Frisket does. Use whatever floats your boat, but again, I feel that Frisket, for the most part, does not hold up to pressures beyond 40 psi, presupposing the canvas is pretty slippery, which usually it is. This canvas is Frederick's canvas and it is prepared with gesso. As long as your blade is sharp, you can literally cut in one area on canvas up to 30 times. Canvas is actually pretty forgiving as long as your blade is sharp. So let's go ahead and block this out with black and we'll go on to the next step. I'm going to use straight acetone. We have the spring. It's got some little chunky things around it. Okay, and that definitely would be a nightmare waiting to happen. I would say the rule of thumb is normally to keep anything that soaks in acetone about a minute and a half, 2 minutes at the most. The part I just threw in there, I'm calling the first part the spring. This is the crown. Okay, this is the highest maintenance area of this Aztec airbrush, and I'll get into this in a minute. I'm going to throw the crown in there. All right, again, no more than a minute and a half. Then we have the fat chubby part here. This is the capsule, okay? This is a pretty easy area to clean of this airbrush. So we're going to let those soak for about a minute and a half. So a minute and a half has went by, okay? I'm going to scoot this over here so the camera can see it. I'm going to move in on the straight water. And after a minute and a half has went by, I'm going to take all three of these pieces and throw them in the water, straight H2O here, okay? And the acetone has, for the most part, got this to where everything's loose and should be able to fall off here. Now what I have here is a Teflon key ring here. The camera may or may not pick this up. You can use any type of maybe pipe cleaner, whatever works, as long as the acetone doesn't melt it. I'm going to brush the front part of this tip off here, like so. Okay. Then swish that out in water. I'm going to come in on the back end of this and just gouge any of the paint out that way. Just kind of brush around it. One thing people need to know here is that a film of paint could cause a nightmare. A lot of times that's what we don't see when we're experiencing the things that get clogged up in these airbrushes, is that a film of paint can cause just as much problem as a speckle of paint. So brush the tip of this off, swish it in water, and we're going to call that part done. The spring's even easier. You can actually just take a toothbrush or whatever and just brush this spring off. It's totally easy. As long as you see the paint come off, you're fine, okay? So we're going to set the spring off to the side. The third piece here is the highest maintenance area of this airbrush here. Now what I'm going to do here, the very front tip, sometimes paint will get encrusted around the front part of this crown here. Okay, so what I'll do is take a needle, an old airbrush needle, sewing needle, whatever, and you want to lightly come in here, and you don't want to rupture this tip, but just push anything out of the tip that the acetone has softened up. Now you can take a Teflon key ring. This is probably the more professional way to do it. Put it in there, okay, twist it and pull it back, and you'll probably see paint on the key ring or whatever. I think I just cleaned these a couple days ago, so they're not that bad. But gouge the paint, twist it, pull it out the back, and you can take your fingernails and just kind of spin it around on any tip dry that may be pre-existing around the top of this thing, okay? After we have this cleaned out, swish it in water, and what we're gonna do, we're gonna take this, put it back in the middle here, kind of sets in there. We're gonna take the spring, and this may or may not click. You guys don't freak out if this does not click in there. This one just did, but if it does not click, don't worry about it, it will still be operative. And we'll go ahead and take our mask off here. Now what we're doing here actually is just working from the white of the board to create a sense of realism with black and white contrast here. You'd be surprised on how quick things come together, just like on the chiaroscuro video. Once you have images with real intense lighting, it comes together pretty quick. So Good composition is usually a product of hard edges and soft edges, and not too much of one or the other. Sometimes if people do everything freehand, it could negate the image by being too fuzzy, but good illustration and good fine art, in my opinion, is usually a product of good hard edges, good soft edges, and knowing how to assign value in a particular area of whatever you're doing. Now, as always, I have removed the contact paper, so I definitely have glue and adherence that is left on the surface. I will lightly take a blue Walmart shop towel and some Goo Gone and lightly wipe off the glue. You definitely don't want to paint on top of that. Okay, now as I've said before, high contrast images, they're pretty easy to pull off, and I always tell people that you could put 400 hours into a piece and people may not like it, but if you choose images that have real intense shadows where you can see the values, and again I always talk about the Olin Mills type photography where someone's looking up at the sky and you can see all the light values really well. If you choose those types of images, chiaroscuro and so on, I think you're actually going to have a lot of fun. The predominant rule here is going to be just like on all the other videos. We're basically going to shade in full tone, half tone, quarter tone, and the areas that we leave alone are basically going to become the highlight or the hottest point of light in that particular area. And with the opaque black, I'll come in here and start sculpting out this eyelash here. I'll probably refine this with a paintbrush later on. Createx black and white actually has a really grainy type of consistency, so you always have the option to put future floor wax or airbrush medium with the paint. One thing I'll be doing is definitely jumping around quite a bit so that I don't overwork any area. And we're going to take the shadow of the eye back here. And here's a pencil line here that I'll need to glaze over a little bit just to kind of calm down. Again, do not kill it. Make sure you can still see where your shadows are, but sometimes your paint will not hide some of these lines and they'll actually be in the way of where the highlight's supposed to be, the widest point. I have the Aztec 4709 airbrush here with the detail tip. I like the Aztec because of the hypersensitivity of the trigger. Now this nose area here, the light is going to be hitting the front part of the nose here. But with my photo reference, I'm going to come in here and leave a little white stripe there. When you get into areas like this, like the nose, I always tell people that you're assigning value. You're discerning and deciding how dark is something in what area. What I'm going to do first here is just start sketching lightly. I will never go in and kill anything unless it's like a real solid black area, like the nostril. But all the other stuff, you want to come in here and lightly sketch that in. And then what you're going to do is jump around the image. So again, you don't overwork any area. You can see how just doing that little part right there establishes the form. We can always get darker later, but for right now, let's just leave that part alone. I think control, again, is learned by working lighter to darker and bigger to smaller. If you go in and kill something too early, too soon, it's pretty much over. I got my little 360-degree shield here. I'll come in and tighten up this nostril. Not too cheesy, but just kind of establish a little creasier type of look here. And this is what I'm saying. You're wanting soft values, hard edges against softness, against other hard edges, and so on. And we'll fill this in a little bit more here. And we'll go ahead and crop the nose right there just to even that out. And on the lip, I'll just come in here and kind of freehand this for now. Added some Future Floor Wax to my black paint here. Again, Future Floor Wax is an acrylic polymer, basically, paint without the color. And it's something about Future that really melts this black down, as it does a lot of colors. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about exactly what we're doing here and add some type of theory to all this. I did take a airbrush class a while back, a long time ago. But basically what we're doing is sketching everything out and kind of dusting things. I have pencil lines that may not be showing up on camera, but they're really, really faint, and this is one of them. This is where the shadow starts, about right here, and it gets darker as we go back that way. Notice that everything I'm doing is a really light wisp. You can call this a feather stroke, you can call this a lot of things, but for the most part, we're not going to be crylining back and forth. So basically what's happening here is this whole sketching process will set everything up. So we'll explain and put little arrows on different things throughout the video to help you assign this shading process. But again, in your own nature, you want to kind of jump around and kind of basically set everything up, because if you get in too dark too soon, you're going to overwork that area, and again, everything's going to have to match that. I'm working really, really feathery in this area, almost invisible, but again, I can see my pencil line that you may not be able to see. When you're doing this type of detail work, you want to make sure that your airbrush is squeaky clean. I usually overhaul it about every 30 minutes because the tip dry with these acrylics is pretty annoying. So if you're working with automotive paints, it's not going to be the same synopsis. The automotive paints pretty much clean themselves as they're going through the airbrush. So I'm working in little wisps here, paying attention to where things are, not crylining back and forth. The jawline, this area here, it's going to be really, really dark. High contrast imagery is probably my favorite because it just looks so dramatic for the amount of time that you put into it. Let's go ahead and jump up to the forehead here. So my shadow down here by the cheek is about right here. So I'm going to continue it up this way. Just kind of block all this in. This is just going to fade out from dark to light. Take our template here and put our knuckles under it, and we can lightly put an indication on where this ear starts. I always tell my students, don't get too creasy on certain things because it's easy to get carried away with these shields, definitely. And we'll presuppose a hairline up in this area here. And come in and define the lips a little bit more here. Let's go ahead and tighten this nostril up a little bit. I want to show you little tricks as I go. And we can take our shield and split the lip right there. And up here by the neck, I'm going to come in and do some light sketching also. Okay, back to the face, I can start darkening in certain areas. I'm just going to keep pulling it back this way now until I reach my little marker here that I made with the pencil. Everybody has their opinion on what detail is, but detail, and I said this on my Eagle video, is not just being able to establish a really, really thin line. Detail's actually an ability to be able to shade intricately without getting a little cramp in your hand. touch up down here by the chin. This is what I would call a quarter tone right here. This is the voided area, or the zero tone. This area right here is the half tone. As we go back towards the back, this is the full tone. So that's what I'm doing when I'm shading here, is I'm assigning value based upon those 4 squares. The neck's usually pretty easy to sketch as long as you don't get carried away and again get too dark too soon. Now this is a hard edge right here. This is an example of how you need a little bit of both. I want to retain this soft edge right here. There's a big band of darkness that starts right here with the arm, and the shadow stops about there. I take my tape here and create a little margin for the back. I basically want to isolate the back. The shadow up here actually starts by the top of the shoulder. Very dominant shadow. So I'll just go real light once again. So for now, let's go ahead and take our tape off here, because again, we're just working really, really light just to kind of see and assign some of the initial value, but again, we're just sketching. Okay, back to the face, I can start darkening in certain areas. Again, let's jump around so we don't overwork any particular area. I would not be able to have this type of a feathery paint without that future floor wax. I can't stress that enough. Everybody has their opinion on what detail is, but detail, and I said this on my Eagle video, is not just being able to establish a really, really thin line. Detail's actually an ability to be able to shade intricately without getting a little cramp in your hand. The shadow on the thumb here is pretty much a full tone solid black little color here. And we will intensify this area quite a bit now back here. This back hand wrapping around. Notice what I did here. I actually, because I'm wisping little wisps, wiping the paint off as I go, watch what I do. I can take this and actually wisp a little bit that way and not have too much drama there and interfere with a crisscross. Let's wrap this around. And now let's do some more sketching here. Be real careful. And we'll continue on the arm area here. And again, let's subdue these pencil lines a little bit. Don't want to totally trash them out and lose them. I'm going to have fun with these hands today. They're going to be pretty easy to do because they're out of focus for the most part. Here's my pencil line that I just glazed away, but it definitely is going to come in handy on where these knuckle joints start. The fingers are cylindrical in nature. Again, you can think of them as a battery or what have you. So the lightest point is going to be in the middle. But in this case, there are cast shadows going everywhere. When I'm freehanding these knuckles and stuff, I'm doing a comparative assessment on where the middle of the finger is and which finger is in what position. I'm just kind of looking around the areas here and making sure that I'm proportioning and shading in the right areas. Let's continue with the straight edge, the arm as it's going down here. Make sure I'm on point. You really got to slow down when you're doing this type of airbrushing. I'm jumping around here. Let's go ahead and isolate this hand. And again, this whole jumping around thing is just to give that area a break that you just airbrushed so you don't overdo it. Here's another real dark area. We're just sculpting all these fingers for right now. This fingernail actually has a turn to it because the finger is pressed up against the arm and it's kind of turning that way, so that's why it may look kind of funky there. I think it's always a good idea to over reduce your black when you're doing hands. Again, I just think, I hate saying the word watery, but you get more chances when you over reduce your paint. Little tiny wisps. This is presupposing a knuckle right there. This is going to be the outskirts of the knuckle. I could probably spend about 5 or 6 hours just in this area if I had that kind of time, which I don't. Let's go ahead and shade back here a little bit. Let's slope this down. Little slopey stroke there. And that kind of brings the knuckle into play there. Now I'm going to totally leave this white in void. We're going to dust some tone over it. The black or the real dark area behind this is going to pop all this out. Now let's leave this alone. Let's start casting this shadow here. Little wispy strokes. So if I had to kind of summarize this, I'm going to keep detailing these hands here. I would say work really, really watery, really, really light. I put the Future Floor Wax in my paint, in my Createx paint, and I really have over-reduced this black. You get more chances. I would also say paint what you see, not what you think you see. You got to practice. And again, you'll be sneaking erasers in if you have to pull off some of the texture and the wrinkles in the skin too. So I'll keep shading this over here. The breast is actually kind of hidden behind the hand here. I want to keep this classy and not get too crazy. And just a lot of shading and freehanding. Also know that I'm doing tons of little wisps. I cannot emphasize enough how this type of shading acuity is sometimes the artist, but sometimes it's the artist and the airbrush. You can take a really, really good artist and give them a cheesy, airbrush. I'm not going to point out any names. But if you give them a production blaster type of airbrush, and it gets a fine line or whatever, whoop-de-doo. Can you come in here and do these little wispy strokes? And we'll finish the arm edge down right there. And let's go work the under part of the breast area here. Sketching this out first. This is going to be a pretty dark area. Now this is one of the more sensual parts of the piece here, so I definitely don't want to come in and get real cheesy with all the templates and stuff. So Make sure that you understand how far to carry the shadows over. Okay, so let's start sculpting this foreshortened wrist here. One of the weirder parts of the piece. There's a bone that's protruding out there. I'll skip around that. Leave that void. And bring all this other stuff down. This is all going to be relatively dark. And wisp up a little bit right there. That presupposes the turning of the base of the hand here. And hopefully this wrist thing will make more sense. I am going to come in here and knuckle my template just to split the breast from the shadow here. This is actually going to be pretty dark here in the end, but I'm going to work it light to dark, so it's more subdued. And down here, let's go ahead and split the arm from the stomach here. That's the wash. We'll take a French curve for a softer edge. I'm just ripping through all these little choices for people to use these different tools. We'll put a wash of paint right here to kind of transition the form of the stomach. And backing off, I'll dust the stomach down a little bit. Don't want to blast it out black. Okay, we'll go ahead and jump to the other side here, do the exact same process. I'll go off camera. We will do the video montage here, and then we will explore some type of design element in the middle of this image. Okay, wrapping this up, I'm going to bring in some kind of white spiritual little burst of light here in the middle. Just kind of do something random, and it really accents this and gives it a type of a spiritual feel to it. The foundation of what we're trying to learn today, again, is the shading more than the fancy little starbursts and stuff. So I hope that everybody paid attention to actually how we assign value within a particular area: full tone, half tone, quarter tone, and the voided areas. I think it's really important that when you're painting this intensely, you really got to look at your photo reference about every 15 seconds. The rule has always been paint what you see, not what you think you see, and try to assign one of those four squares to one of these areas of which you're painting, and also try to fade those areas out. Try not to forget that the intensity and the quality of the photograph is going to be a big part of this assigning process. Take your time. Patience is probably one of the most important things an airbrusher could ever have, especially when you're doing fine art. So I hope you've learned a little something today. We'll see you next time.